Welcome, everyone who's joining us to a very special YANA Town Hall this Wednesday evening on May 25th, 2022. Great. So I just wanted to quickly lay the foundation. We are talking this evening about how Yaleys are helping the efforts in Ukraine on the ground. As we know, Yaleys have always been known to step up and help wherever is needed and however is needed. And clearly, as the war and the human toll tragedy are still going on, members of the Yale community are working together, both as a university and what we'll learn tonight is these little clusters and groups of people with their own efforts are really banding together to support victims and people on the ground and all the heroes on the ground, as well as those fleeing the war-torn country. So tonight we have with us hopefully 3 doctors from the Yale School of Medicine, and I'll introduce them in a minute, and 2 students from SOM, and I know they also have a third that they work with. They're going to talk about their individual connections to Ukraine, how they've worked together to form these nonprofits and other efforts to help people in Ukraine. And please, it's going to be hopefully in depth, and I know they've been talking a lot and there are a lot of needs, so let's jump right into it. I want to talk about, we're going to be basically 2 kind of organizations we're going to focus on. The first one is called United for Ukraine, and that was started by the doctors, and they'll tell us about it, which is a nonprofit and a fiscal project of Dwight Hall at Yale. So I'm very interested to hear how you guys came to establish that and be on campus. And what they do is deliver medical supplies and services in 3 critical areas of need. That is aligned with their medical specialties. We've got aid to critical care on the ground in Ukraine, and that's primarily at military hospitals, mental health, and women's health. And we'll hear more about that. Dr. Andriy Zinchuk at Yale is an assistant professor and the director of advanced apnea management program, lots of other critical care and sleep medicine. So he'll talk to us about the medical system in Ukraine and how they've been connecting there. Also, Dr. Irina Sterlis is an associate professor of psychiatry and molecular imaging, mood, anxiety, and cognitive sciences. So hopefully Irina will tell us a little bit about efforts on mental health and psychiatry. And hopefully Dr. Vashma Gita can join us. Although you guys are all, this effort is not their day job. So some of them are actually, they're practicing doctors, and we've got business folks, but Dr. Ala Vashma Gita is an assistant professor of OBGYN and reproductive sciences. So she'll be talking to us about women's health. And if she's not able to do that, hopefully one of you can fill in. The other way of helping is what happens to the people who are coming out, which we understand is mostly women and children. So we have with us Ali Platin and Ella, also from Ukraine, both at SOM, and Ella, you just graduated, I understand. So congratulations. Was it to yesterday or today? So that's wonderful to hear. Ali's came to SOM with a background in corporate finance, M&A, and private equity. She helped start the Path Forward, and she'll tell you about that organization. And Ella, who just graduated, also is from Latvia, but received her medical degree in dermatology in the Ukraine. And then she's been in the United States for several years, is also now a nurse practitioner and just finishes her MBA degree. So we'll hear from them in a couple different ways to do this. So let's start, let's personal, like what are your ties to Ukraine? What were you kind of doing here? And when did you find out about what was going on? What was your first reaction? And then we'll move, let's get the personal, and then we'll move to kind of the organizational. So Irina, why don't we start with you? Because I know you might be able to need to jump off.
So thank you so much, Rachel, for putting this together, and for everybody in attendance. It's very nice to have the support and interest. So I was born in Kiev, Ukraine, many years back, and my family immigrated here in '89, right before the Soviet Union collapse. And we moved to Buffalo, New York, and I honestly, most of our family moved to America, so I didn't go back. I don't have many ties personally, besides friends and some family, but my parents have very close friends. And so just living a life in America as an American child. And, as I'm growing up, my heritage kind of roots me, like raising my children, making sure they know their heritage. And obviously with my parents and my grandfather, we don't speak English. So they hear, and learn a little bit. And then when the war hit, I was numb, I think is the best way to describe it, for a few days, and believed in disbelief. And then my husband left town. He goes on work trips, and I was alone with kids, but they go to school, and I just would sit and refresh CNN and cry for a week until he came home, and he saw me basically on the floor crying from 5 a.m. on, and realized that wasn't normal, and needed to do something about it. I'm a person who does, and so I decided I needed to raise funds, and the best way to do it is, back in the day, I have a degree in art, and with kids and everything, it's not as possible. So I bake and cook a lot, and it lets, my stress out a bit. And so I decided I was going to raise funds by making special Ukrainian bread that you can't buy here, and that I didn't have a recipe for, but I worked there have been many breads to come through for me to work out a recipe that is what my family thinks is closest to what, the generations made in Ukraine. And if people donated a lot of money, they got a huge poppy seed bread. And the story, my husband is my PR person because I'm not on social media. The story got picked up by a local newspaper in Guilford on the shoreline, and then by Yale. And then in the meantime, I met Andrei and Alla. So I don't know if maybe we want to
Okay.
talk to Andrei and then get back to how we
We'll cut back to what you guys did once you kind of found each other. Thank you. And you are a practicing psychiatrist?
So I'm a neuropsychologist.
Neuropsychologist.
And I'm clinical, but I do not practice outside of diagnosing people who come through my research program. I have a large research program to do work in mood, trauma, and suicide. So unfortunately, this is very to my heart.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for sharing. Andrei, you want to unmute? Tell us your story, how you came to be here.
Hi, yeah. So my name is Andrei Zinchuk, in Ukrainian, Andrei Zinchuk, and translated into English by the U.S. consulate. And so I was born and raised in Ukraine, in Lviv, in the western part of the country. And so it's a city of about 750,000 people normally. Currently, it's about 1.2 million, reflecting of what's happened in Ukraine since the war. But I lived there until I was about 15, and then I moved to the States. And so I got most of my education here. I was an engineer, chemical engineer before, and then ended up going to medical school. And currently I work as a ICU doctor, and I also do research in sleep medicine. And so, I'm a sleep medicine researcher, ICU doctor, and that's basically what I was doing mostly up until most recently in the war. And so, I think I do go back to Ukraine essentially every year with my family. We still have family in the western part of the country. And we were supposed to go back this summer. It was a couple of years of a hiatus due to COVID. We were supposed to go back this summer and visit family and friends, and have my kids see the country again. And unfortunately, that was interrupted by the war. And we sort of knew that this was coming, that the writing was on the wall for a good number of months. And the war actually has been going on in Ukraine since 2014, really. Just
when you say the writing was on the wall, what gave you that? If you're sitting here in New Haven. And you hadn't been here.
I mean, I think that, yeah. And so, yeah, thanks, Rachel. And so I think that the reason why the writing's on the wall is that, that Russia was building up troops for months and months all along the, 75% of Ukrainian border. And so Like people don't do that unless there's something that's going to come of it. You know, it's an extraordinary expense to do that. And for many years, Putin has expressed his views about what Ukraine is and what it isn't, and that, you know, Ukraine are not a people. We're just small Russians, and the land that we live on doesn't belong to us. And my culture and ethnicity are actually just a asterisk to the Russian culture and ethnicity. And so I think for all those reasons, it was pretty clear that was going to happen. The question was, you know, when and how much. And so, in fact, you know, when it did happen, I think a lot of people didn't expect. I didn't expect it to all come at once like it did. I guess, but
where were you?
You know, I clearly remember where I was. I mean, I was sure. So I was in clinic that day. And, you know, I get like little alerts on my phone from a Ukrainian news site. And so, you know, that's what I got when I was in clinic in the morning. And so it, like, similar to Irina, it was numbing. And of course, first of all, I was worrying because you have no idea who's getting bombed where. And so you're making phone calls to your family and figuring out that you're safe. And for the western part of Ukraine, it was actually turned out to be a relatively safe place to be, and a lot of displaced individuals ended up traveling to that place for safety. So fortunately for my family, they were safe. They ended up actually moving to the countryside into a summer home just to get away, because the place that they live in an apartment that's right across from a military hospital. And so it's sort of a strategic target. And so they were a little worried. And so they moved to the countryside. And so we were trying to decide, do we bring him home here? Do we try to have him go to Poland and bring to the US? So a lot of emotions, a lot of concern, a lot of fear, and just a lot of helplessness.
Okay.
You know, like, what am I going to do? Right.
All right. So we're going to pause there. So when we come back, clearly all of you did something. We're going to get into that, but I want to finish. Ali, why don't you let us know a little bit about your story?
Sure. I'm Ali Platon. I'm a Romanian, and this is how I got involved in all these actions. I was born around 30 miles away from the border with Ukraine in Romania, North Romania. And I have many Ukrainian friends, both in the United States and in Europe. I moved to the United States in 2017, so I lived most of my life in Romania. And when the war started, a couple of days after that, when Romania started receiving refugees from Ukraine, I was talking to my sister on the phone, and she still lives there. Actually, my whole family still lives in Romania at the border. And my sister was driving to the border with some of her friends to bring supplies, food, water, and everything else to the refugees. So I got the idea that, okay, maybe I can do a little bit more. I sent her some money, and then I asked some people around in my class at Yale School of Management if they can donate something so we can send some more money. And actually, one thing led to another. I built a website to raise funds and offer more support to the refugees. I engaged to a few local organizations. In total, I managed to raise about $20,000 in about 2 weeks. And we helped over 100 people. I know it's a small number compared to the the number of refugees, but we help them with accommodation at the border, with transportation to other countries, food, and other supplies. So yeah, I think we can talk a little bit later about all the steps that I took after that.
Yeah,
and how I met
absolutely.
Ella.
Okay, all right, thank you. That just helps us kind of paint the picture of what we're coming in. Ella, if you wouldn't mind telling us your story.
Yes, sure. My name is Ella Archibald, and I just graduated from the Yale Executive MBA program. Originally from Latvia, I finished medical school in Ukraine and had my own practice as doctor dermatologist in Ukraine. Later, I served as a deputy chief executive medical director of the Ukrainian State Hospital. Now I have my own startup, Pink Bridge, which is based in New York City and is a home delivery of Botox injections and other aesthetic services. When the war started, I called my colleagues from the Ukrainian hospital and found out what they needed. I sent money to the hospital and purchased some medical supplies. At the same time, being in the Yale program, I received many questions from my MBA cohort students. They wanted to understand the political situation in the region, and they want to go in depth, understanding the situation, what's going on. So we joined forces with Ali. We made a presentation for 2 cohorts. It's about 140 Yale students. After this presentation, they started a fundraising campaign and decided to go to Krakow to help refugees. And for this trip, we raised about 15,000.
Wow. Okay. We're going to get back into that because you've actually gone back during this war effort. Irina and Andrei, have either of you been able to get over there? You've been operating remotely from here for the help. Okay. So we've got a couple different perspectives on it, which is really interesting. So, all right, let's get now to the kind of organizations. Let's start with United for Ukraine. Andrei and Irina, how did you find each other, and how did you decide to come together and create like an actual entity? And how did you find Dwight Hall? Why don't you let's talk about the organization itself.
So both of us, independent of each other, were emailing frantically anybody and everybody we knew at Yale. One to find out, who else is Ukrainian, who else is from Ukraine in any shape or form, and 2, what is Yale doing to help, and 3, who else is Ukrainian, like a very desperate need to connect. And it was, I found another person who's in our group now, and we chatted, and then actually one of my mentees is office mate with Andrei. And when I was telling Steve this and this, and he's like, hold it, and so I emailed Andrei, and the rest is kind of history. He was connecting with some other people, and we just, after chatting, we built first a task force. We all got on Zoom and talked, and we were all like-minded and all wanted to help, and then decided that it had to be a company in order for us to get funding, in order for us to get supplies directly to Ukraine, unlike larger entities where you donate money and then at some point supplies get to Ukraine somewhere. They talks to hospitals in Ukraine and asks what they need, and then he finds that equipment and it gets delivered to that doctor who asked. So it's doctor to doctor is the difference, and he has a presentation.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay. How did you guys, because we talk about nonprofits, how did you decide, who told you, informed you, doctors, that it was going to be helpful to have an actual nonprofit entity, but maybe you don't have time to file, and there's a thing called a fiscal sponsorship arrangement? How did you get all that knowledge so quickly?
Talking to people and talking to each other. I mean, we independently, Andrei had raised funds through his family and delivered equipment. And I was raising funds for a different organization, for a large organization, not knowing where my money was going. And he said, put efforts together. And I think just talking to a lot of different people and understanding the needs and what we should do in that, maybe we can do things more efficiently and help people directly if we, did it ourselves versus going through larger organizations. And so we switched gears and started fundraising for quote unquote us. There's no overhead, 100% goes, we all volunteer. I think there's about 8 of us. Nobody, takes anything. But Andrei can tell you more.
Okay.
Sure.
Perfect. Thank you.
So, thanks, Ida. And so, I think I do have to, I want to give tremendous credit to Peter Crumlish from the Dwight Hall.
Great.
that we connected with. And so I think Irina, I, and Alla, who's not here, and all the rest of us, we knew that we wanted to do something that we realized that this is going to be a long-term effort. And, the medical supplies are hugely important, but over time, the needs are probably going to change. And we wanted to be able to have a say in what is it that we are helping with. And so we needed to have some independence. And we also noticed that there was a need for what we did, because like you donate money to place supplies, get ordered, and you don't actually know where they end up. And it turns out actually one of the biggest challenges in the early parts of the war was logistics. Like there's all this stuff being shipped from US or EU, but it was unclear as to whether it was targeted or not. And so we were just surprised that, like, we know that all these medical supplies are going to Ukraine. Why are doctors in need of this, this, and this, and this? Where's the supplies that people are sending from the US? And so that was the sort of the need. And Peter Crumlish from Dwight Hall was actually incredibly helpful and sort of a guardian angel for us, because we needed to be able to raise money. We had a good story, but we just didn't have an organization. And it takes
how
a
did
while
you know
to
to
get.
find Peter? Did he reach out to you, or did you guys just look for like who does nonprofits at Yale or something like that?
So I think somebody had mentioned that we should talk to Peter. And so Peter has a good reputation. So we're like, we should talk
Peter's
to Peter.
on
That
here,
sounds
so.
good.
Okay.
And so Peter was amazing. We sort of met with Peter very quickly. He sort of assessed our situation and say, okay, here's what we can do. And so having fiscal sponsorship from Dwight Hall was actually instrumental for us to be able to do what we did. And so we're just really grateful for his help and advice in this process.
So your first direction was to try to get medical supplies and know exactly what was coming and where they were going. So how did that?
Yeah, so maybe I can just, if it's okay with you, I'll just share just a few slides. I don't want to.
Please. For
the audience, please raise your hand. You feel free to say, all right, no slides. I can't deal with PowerPoints. Okay. It's 6 p.m. But just a couple of minutes, I thought that might be helpful just to sort of portray what we've done. And so, what I'll do is I'll skip some slides that just show some of the horror and terrible things that we saw that motivated us, and sort of get into a little bit of a story behind us. And so just trying to understand, like what is it that we can do? And the way to help in the situation is really to connect with other people. And so this is what you see here is a military hospital in the western part of Ukraine, Refugee, which is where I'm from. And in fact, I lived across the street from it, and you can see this blue fence here. As a kid, I remember climbing over this fence and going to see the Afghan vets that were recovering in the hospital. And, I'm a pulmonologist, but I'll tell you a secret. I used to smoke cigarettes with them while they were telling their war stories. And so, I knew this place. I knew the doctors that are working there. And so I connected with this young man. His name is Andriy Medved, and he's an anesthesiologist, and he's the one who's taking care of critically ill people. And he was saying that we're getting, a lot of people from Kiev with severe injuries, which is where the major offensive was at the time. And we need to, they're what's called shock, which is when they lose a lot of blood and their organs shut down, and they need to support their organs, and the kidneys were failing and didn't have supplies to support people's kidneys. And it's like, well, wow, okay. And so what we did is raise some money through local efforts, and then where can I buy these kidney supplies? And so we looked around in all places, and turns out that you can actually still buy them in Poland, which is right across the border. And so this is the city of Lviv. Right here is Ukraine. This is the western part. Most of the war action was happening in the north around Chernihiv and Kiev, and then of course in the south and west and east. And so we identified a supplier for these kidney machines and purchased them, and were able to deliver them to Lviv. And so this essentially is the device that's being used. That's the artificial kidney machine. And you can see this blood being filtered here. And so they just needed these things that filtered the blood. They couldn't find them, and couldn't afford them at the time. And so we did that, we delivered that. And I just want to share with you guys a video. And please don't record this or take photos of
we'll crop this out of the
of a soldier that was treated. And so this is a thank you from the hospital in Lviv. And so what they're showing here is, I'll turn down their volume, is they're showing a young soldier who had a crush injury and was in shock and needed the support of the kidney device to survive, and he did. And this is the kidney device in the background that I just showed you before. And what they're showing is that his kidney function is actually recovering. And so they're just showing a little bag of a little bit of yellow stuff, and that's the recovery of the kidney. And so if he didn't have this device hooked up to him, he probably would have died without the support of it. And so it was one thing, but what made us realize is that, even with little things like this, we can make a difference. And so, since that time, we've, and this was sort of part of the story that sort of helped us understand that we can actually make a difference. And so I met Ala, who's here in the middle. She's a obstetrician, gynecologist, and works with young women in terms of health. And then you see Irina on the right and myself on the left. And so we sort of got together and we represent sort of the three things that our organization focuses on: is critical care supplies for me, and then women's health for Ala, and mental health for Irina. And so then, we United for Ukraine was born. And so I sort of mentioned as to why we are who we are. And so these are the three different arms of the work that we focus on at the moment. And so really our mission is to deliver precision aid and to foster health and well-being of people in Ukraine that face war consequences. So it's not just military hospitals, but the key is being precise, closed loop communication with where the material goes or our help goes, and getting feedback on that. And so just for perspective, right now, we are essentially in weekly contact with critical care docs around Ukraine. And so you see major military hospitals in western part, in Kiev, in Kharkiv, which was recently a huge place of a battle, and Dnipro, which is becoming a hotspot, and also Odessa, which are also becoming a hotspot. And so these doctors that you see here are young ICU docs, and not all the ICU docs can do sort of the cutting edge medicine that can be done. And so these are the few that can do it. And so they're the ones that we're supplying with this cutting edge medical supplies for them. And so I sort of like to call them as like the special ops of the ICUs, because they're the ones who can sort of do the advanced management for critical care.
If I can pause you here, I was going to ask a question later. When you say the advanced or this sort of newer technology, is that sort of like the battlefield trauma care? That's, I would assume, I don't know.
So sure. So what they do is actually not battlefield. What they do is take care of soldiers or trauma patients who are able to survive in the battlefield and are transported to an intensive care unit in these major hospitals. And
so how is that different than other kinds of trauma care that might be required? You're saying these young ones, these particular ones can do it. It's just a real specialty or a knack with their experience.
So they're able to use acute kidney replacement devices in specific ways that are not commonly used in Ukraine. They're able to use breathing machines in specific ways that are not normally used. And they're able to administer anesthesia medication in the ways that are not normally administered. And so that's the reason why we're working with them. And that's why I sort of call them special ops, because, majority of ICU docs don't do what they do.
Got it.
Essentially. Yeah. And so, for example, this woman, young woman right here, I was talking to her on the phone for days. And I thought, she directs the intensive care unit in Kharkiv, which is a city of 1.8 million people, and the military side. And she was telling me what's happening on the ground and, what they're going through, what they need. And I just assumed that she was, maybe a 45, 50-year-old woman who was experienced, and she is, but she's in her like late 20s running a huge ICU with trauma. It was just super impressive. She's been living in the hospital since March 1st. They haven't left. They've been eating, sleeping there, taking care of patients there without being able to leave. So what these guys are doing is actually amazing and incredible. We're just fortunate to be able to support them. And so this is just a little, evidence of what we've provided. We've provided these dialysis supplies to Kharkiv in April, and in the middle you see a picture of some what we call centralized or large bore IVs that we can put in next to help provide fluids and blood products, and then an ultrasound machine that allows to identify why the patient is dying imminently. And so I'll take a pause here and maybe give Irina some time to talk a little bit about mental health, which I think is another huge aspect of what's
Yeah,
needed there.
please. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Andri. So yeah, at first our efforts were strictly medical, and then it became clear that there's another need. I was asked to find out if it was true that hundreds of women and children were being raped and needed surgery for the damage that was done to them. And we spent, Andri, Ala, they were helping me because they had connections in the hospitals in Ukraine. So they were trying to connect me to different doctors. And finally, we found out that it was more than we were told. And now, you know, that was when Bucha first happened. And now, of course, the world knows. Back then, people didn't know. And we were trying to get attention of humanitarian folks, United Way, you know, to tell the world about the horrors that are happening and the way the civilians are treated, not just, you know, the military invasion, because I think when people think of war, they think soldiers are fighting, but it's so much more. The civilians are impacted as well. So it's everybody, it doesn't really matter who you are. Everybody's getting, soldiers and civilians are getting traumatized in horrible ways right now. And so through different people, I got connected to Victor Vus. He's in Ukraine. He is part of the National Association for Psychologists in Ukraine, which is part of the Greater European Association for Psychologists. He leads many, many efforts. He is connected to several organizations who are providing psychologists with training how to address this trauma, because as you can imagine, and there are a lot of psychologists in Ukraine, but you know, everybody has their specialty. So some people are doing this, some people are doing, you know, industrial organizational psychiatry, some people are doing social work, and only small amount of population has trauma training. And so I spoke with him and he told me what they need, trauma training. And so I found some organizations that are already providing trauma training for free, and I got them connected and they're taking courses. Victor also wrote a piece to get, you know, the world to understand what is going on there. And I am part of the editorial board for Chronic Stress Journal, and Chadi Abdallah is the editor and a colleague and a friend. And I asked him would he consider publishing an editorial from a Ukrainian psychologist. And he was, I fully support this effort. And so within a couple of days, we got this submitted. And then within like a week or two, it is out. Basically, Victor's experiences and observations in Ukraine, what is needed. And what is needed is more mental health training for psychologists, the trauma training, crisis intervention training, immediate and long-term. Also, because of the huge need, it's not just psychologists who are providing the help, it is social workers and volunteers. And these volunteers are people who maybe college graduates with whatever degree, or do not have a degree yet, but they are there. Victor was telling me 35,000 people in Lviv terminal, 35,000 refugees, and he had to provide trauma relief to them. And some other psychologists were there, and the horror of the situation. And, you know, right now, just trying to equip these psychologists, empower them with more training, with different types of training, cognitive behavioral therapy, EMDR, crisis intervention, child therapy, loss, grief. You know, they're interested in anything we can provide to them. So if anybody has knows of resources, we were on Zoom today with somebody in UK who's going to provide more hands-on training. And so Victor is an amazing psychologist, and Andrei has a photo of him later on, of him also with the new effort in Viv. And I'm on Zoom with him or talk or WhatsApp with him almost every day. And he is willing and has taken on this enormous effort of, helping Ukraine restore and refunction in terms of mental health. So if anybody has more resources, please reach out to us, where there's no end to the need, and it's going to be needed for many years, decades.
Sure, I'm sure. Thank you. And can either of you, I gather Ala can't be here, can you talk about some of the women's health issues that you're also supporting?
Yes, so as I said, before, it's probably thousands of women and girls, children who have been raped, and because we're amongst many people, I won't go into details, but it's horrible situations where mothers want to kill themselves because they're witnessing their girls being raped.
Oh, God, yeah.
Little girls, very little girls. And there are surgical repairs that are needed. There are things like kits to be delivered so in US, there are rape kits when somebody's raped that are administered at the hospital with different, to collect evidence and information. But, the situation there is not something that, there's some attempt at that, but the big attempt is also at preventing unwanted pregnancies. And this is absolutely horrible, but so their Plan B kits, with the Plan B pills, they are figuring out ways to give them to women before this happens, so that they are ready for when this happens. So this is, I'm sorry, it's
traumatic. I can't even imagine.
And so we are also trying to figure out ways that they can get them, because you're not going to announce there are rape kits at the pharmacy, go pick them up, or at the bread aisle.
Mhm.
So trying to figure out what we can add to the bags to make it more discreet.
Mhm.
Because there's also, could be cultural or religious issues around birth control pills, or, what's happening and all that stuff. And so, putting self-care, making more like a self-care kit, with lipstick and moisturizer and some discreetness. So that's one of the things that Ala and I are working on. And then Ala is also working on, the repairs that the women are going to need, and just ensuring also, where they can go if they need an abortion, because not every country will do. There's just, it's very emotional work, unfortunately.
And what about, I can imagine, the media coverage was what we saw in the West of, the maternity wards being bombed, and there are regular pregnancies, or expected and in the process of being supervised medically at various stages. That has to be treated and managed, I'd imagine, and not to mention, I guess, any other, and this is probably for all medical facilities in the country, ongoing cancer care, it could be anything from ovarian, breast cancer, right? People were in the middle of getting medical treatment, I assume, for some of these things. So have you had to encounter that from women's perspectives, or can you tell us a little bit more about beyond what we were shown about the, the maternity wards?
Yeah. So I'm sorry, my kids are texting me. Can you guys please stop? Sorry.
That's okay.
They are hungry.
That's fine. I'll let you go.
So I can't say too much about it. This is something that, we've all, because we can't do everything,
Yeah.
the three of us, everything at once, we've taken leads on things. So this is Ala's lead. So one of the horrors is the bombing of the hospitals and the pregnant women and children dying. But in terms of care, I know that a lot of care had stopped, but I don't know if Andrei knows more because I don't know too much about that.
No,
part.
thank you. And I'll just say a couple of words, and then I want to make sure that we
Yes.
share the time too. And so I think that yeah, I mean, speaking with one of the professors of obstetrics and gynecology in Odessa, which is a city that's getting bombed intermittently, basically what they're doing is they're sort of transferred all of the deliveries and childcare into the basement, so almost like a bomb shelter. And so all of the obstetric care happens down there, and that's where the OBGYN doctors are spending their time. And then during the times that they're not, they're actually taking care of trauma patients out in the field. And so they are doing quite a bit. So I think what I will do is, I'll stop here.
Sure.
In terms of our presentation, but just as a heads up, I really just wanted to show a slide on our partners. And I really wanted to thank Dwight Hall for their fiscal sponsorship and Peter, and it's an amazing organization with 130 years of service, and we wouldn't get far without them. And then, we've been getting medical supplies from these other nonprofit organizations who are providing in-kind donations. And so I think it's about 250,000 so far we've gotten. And then we've partnered so far with a couple of companies like DLA Piper, who are our legal company, and the consulting firm to help us understand some of the media landscape and how to work this new nonprofit, because this is a totally new effort for us. We're physicians and scientists, not necessarily philanthropists.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And I do want to turn it over to Ali and Ella about, you guys are coming in on the border countries and treating people, working with folks who are coming out. Can you give us a story about, like, how did that come about? You said you called your sister who was right there, but pick up on that, how you found each other. You found each other through giving this presentation, but how did you get organized about this and figure out what needed to be done? And you're one of the countries, I guess you're working primarily in Romania, but there's Poland, and what's going on the ground there, and how have you been involved?
Sure. So I think, if I remember right, Ella, one of my classmates introduced, well, we knew each other, but we didn't know that we were trying to help the refugees, but the separate efforts. So one of my classmates kind of connected us, and we started working on a few projects. One of the projects is the Path Forward, the digital platform that connects the volunteers from Yale with the refugees, because we realized that even though we're trying to help with immediate support at the border with shelter and food, once the refugees move to other countries, they need to start over their lives, and they need a job, they need education, and so on. So what this platform does is connecting people from Yale and helping the refugees finding a job. They guide them through the whole hiring process. We're trying to create the resumes for them and help them for the interviews, guide them to where to apply for jobs, and so on. And also
in the United States or in Romania and Poland?
Actually, we're doing this across the world because, well, there are some differences in applying for jobs, but not big. So for this service in particular, we can definitely help, and we've been working with people from other countries. And Ella came up with a very good idea to actually go to Poland, raise some donations here, and go to Poland and help and donate directly and interact directly with a few shelters. So I will let Ella talk about our trip to Poland.
Okay, thank you, Ali. So we decided to go to the Polish-Ukrainian border, and we arrived to Medyka. The first day, it's a little town. And interesting that at the Polish-Ukrainian border, just for this hour, which we were there with Ali and a few other students, we met 4 people from New York, which worked there as volunteers. They were distributing food and also medical care to refugees. We also visited to shelters. We had a guide, a tour, a woman we found, she is from Poland, and she said that there are, as all we know, like more than 3 million at that time, was more than 3 million Ukrainian refugees in Poland, and they didn't have refugee camps. So Ukrainians, they moved to Poland on train or by bus, and people literally had nothing. They have nowhere to go. They didn't have anything, no connection, no money, and they were staying at a train station, and Polish people will go there, just families, they pick up Ukrainians and bring them to their homes. So there are millions of Ukrainians were situated in the homes of Polish people, and many dormitories or students, places were converted to refugee camps. So we visited, me, Ali, and Bart, who is here on this picture, we visited 2 refugee shelters. So one was 200 shelter in 200 people with 174 children being from 12 months to 15 years old. And these children, and all these women, they have no basic thing because they were fleeing the war literally in the clothes and the attire what they stood. They just left the houses under bombardment. So when we came to these places, they needed simple things like socks, underwear, bra, or summer clothes for children. So we went to the stores and we bought a lot of, sandals, different sizes, and summer clothes. And children also ask for sweets. So we have some pictures where we carrying a lot of cakes and sweets for the kids. And in this shelters, there was a problem with the internet. Their Wi-Fi was working only in certain spots. So unfortunately, teenagers had no possibility to study even because Poland cannot accommodate millions of children into their schools. So they needed a remote learning. And we went to the store, we bought equipment and installed Wi-Fi so they have internet in, in this whole facility. Also, the next day we went to another shelter and we heard stories, people fleeing Kharkov and Chernigov, and it was heartbreaking stories from Ukrainian simple families whose life was destroyed on February 24th. And it was very emotional trip for us. I don't know, Ali, if you want to add
I'm
something.
amazed. I mean, neither of you is from Poland. Did you literally just said, and you're in the middle of your the academic year, so you just said, we have to go to Poland, and you just bought and went? Like, how did you know where to go?
That's exactly how it did it. Yes.
Guys,
And we also have
amazing.
jobs, so we were only there for 2 days because we couldn't take time off from our jobs. So yeah, it was a big effort, but I think we also made an impact, and we're planning to go back in the end of August. Our next steps are actually we're trying to open a nonprofit organization as well. So Irina, I'm probably gonna email you asking for all the details right after. And we were planning to start the paperwork next week. Actually, we engaged with a few people already, and we brought some more people on board. Now we're about 6 or 7 people from Yale School of Management, class of 22 and 23. The idea is that we also identified, as Ella mentioned, the need of education. Most of the children in the shelters can't go to school anymore, and they can't attend any online classes because they don't have laptops or internet access. So we're also trying to raise money to buy laptops, and also some of our classmates are donated their laptops that they don't use anymore. So we're just gonna probably make a big package and ship it to the shelters. After we launch our nonprofit, hopefully by the end of this summer, we're going to Poland again and help some more people. So these
Do you
are
have are there other, I mean, for what other organizations, NGOs are on the ground? I mean, you're talking about there was an immediate crisis and just Polish civilians, people were showing up and taking people. What has it gotten like now? Does it seem more organized with large, crisis organizations, or is there, I assume there's still a need for anything that you can still get to these very, specific targeted help?
From what we've noticed, not at the border. So the border seems to be, at least the ones that I'm aware of, the one that we visited in Poland, and also the one that I'm still working with in Romania. And from what I've heard, the borders are pretty well organized right now. But I think the need now is for, of course, there are still people in shelters that are not supported by the government. So they still need food, they need basic supplies, everything that we managed to provide to these shelters that we visited. I'm sure there are many other shelters out there that still need supplies, and also there are the people who manage to relocate to other countries, and they need to start over. And as I mentioned, they need to find a job, learn a new language, and so on. So there's so many needs.
What's the feeling generally, if to the extent that you've been able to tell from the waves of refugees? Do people, are they kind of resigned that they're going to have to resettle, or are there families who think they'll be able to go back depending on where they may have evacuated from?
There are many people who are planning to go back, and actually we were shocked to see that at the border that we visited in Poland, there are more people, there are lines, huge lines of cars going back to Ukraine. There are not that many people coming to Poland, actually. I think we saw maybe 5 people in an hour that we stayed there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there were many
Andre,
people going
you're
back.
nodding your head. Do you know of this?
Right. Yeah, I'm nodding my head because, I have friends who were in Poland for a few months and they came back. They lived in the gym for a month and then they just was like, what are we doing? We're going to go back. And, Kyiv is now a safer place. So they're heading back. And so, yeah, I mean, and plus just talking with the people I know who go back and forth through the border, who deliver medical supplies, getting into Ukraine is much harder than getting out of Ukraine at the moment.
Really interesting. And people should feel free to ask questions as we're going through this. All right, so let's talk about, since we're getting close to the end of the hour, what are the biggest needs from your perspectives? Obviously, we're going to hear, most people hear from Red Cross and the major NGO organizations. And like you said, they're going to be, you don't always know where it's going, and they're hopefully the reputable ones are there. But from both what you're seeing on the edges from the refugees and from the medical supplies and services that are need, what are the biggest needs right now, and how can people that are in our audience or listening help? And whoever wants to go, Andre, since you've got the screen, go ahead. Beautiful. Oh, you're on mute.
It's only been 3 years since we've been using Zoom, right? So I think for us that the major gap is funding, which may be true for all organizations, but we at this moment have gotten our infrastructure in place and suppliers in place and projects in place that essentially need funding. And so just a couple of projects that we're working on are just being shown here. And so some ventilators that are mobile, that are needed in Kyiv, which is then transferring those ventilators to mobile hospitals around the eastern part of Ukraine. And then, Irina can speak to the work that she's done in coordinating the provision of mental health, which I think is huge. And so these are just some ballpark numbers of what is needed for these 2 particular projects, although we have 6 or 7 other projects on at the same time. So I think for us, our needs are about 450,000 at the moment, based on our latest. That's
estimate. Just immediate needs right now to get.
This is if we were to get funding, we could buy things, pay for them, and have these things delivered this week if needed.
Just quick question. Is there any existing infrastructure with medical and other supplies that may have been put in place due to the COVID crisis, like ventilators, getting things to other countries, PPE, things like that? Is any of that overlapping, or is this not?
So I think the PPE is not a problem. There's plenty of it. And in fact, Yale donated about $1 million worth of PPE, and so, which was helpful in some ways, but the needs are mostly they have to do with physical and mental trauma.
Right.
And I think so. There are some, one of the silver linings of COVID is that hospitals are able to explode their capacity quickly.
Right.
And so they've established that. And so I
Right.
think what we're doing is filling these smaller gaps. We're not going to fix the Ukrainian healthcare system with our
Right,
supplies.
right.
It's a huge country, 44 million people, but we have specific fixed needs in places that are super active in caring for these individuals.
And the specific the $13,000 for the mental health, is that for the training for people to go in and serve those who need it?
Yeah, so there are two aspects. So one, we're talking with, there are 500 IDPs in a town near Lviv. There are 4 psychologists and 3 social workers who are working for food.
Mm.
They don't get paid. They're volunteering, they get fed. And so there's an ask for $6,900 to pay them for 3 months to carry the caseload of
Mhm.
500 displaced women and children, to help them find shelter, find safety, find food, maybe jobs, education. And then there is Dr. Risik, who is from Kiev. She's a grief psychologist. She provides training. So again, she right now is living off food, basically, working for food, and she has children, and she said she would do training, but she's asking for, people need some funds, so $6,000 say for her and her group to provide courses. I believe it's 18 classes. So didactic experience, hands-on experience, and supervision. So, so that's just the 2 little, but we have, today I was talking with the UK who would provide, it's enormous. People cannot donate enough, I feel like, at this point. And every donation, 100%, as Peter put in the chat, it all goes there. Dwight Hall is covering the overheads. We all work voluntarily. So everything goes, whatever you donate to us, to Ollie, to Ella, everything goes straight to helping people of Ukraine. And we really appreciate any amount. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ella and Ali, how can people support the work that you guys are doing in this, assisting with refugees and their needs?
Yes, no, from our trip to Poland, we saw the need for refugees. As we said, that education for children, will try to provide computers so they can have remote learning, especially if the war will continue, like going forward for, in September, October, kids needs to go to school. And also private shelters, they need basic thing, like these Polish people, they're paying their own money for to feed like 300 people, to clothes them, and just basic thing they need.
Do you have, and you and Ali, do you guys, so you have a GoFundMe site? You have just specific targets for kinds of supplies you're hoping to ship or to bring with you when you go over?
That's correct. Yes, we're continuing to raise funds on GoFundMe. We also had a campaign on PayPal. It expired though. We're going to open again before we go to Poland. But for now, we can still raise donations on GoFundMe, and 100% of all donations, of course, are being used to help the refugees. We are paying for our own trips, and all the expenses related to us are paid by ourselves. Just wanted to specify this.
Well, thank you. I see people that have asked questions, and I hope this information gets shared, and we'll bring this out to the world as much as we can. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Ella, Ali, Andre and Irina, and please to your colleagues who have been working with you. Thank you for doing this, and I hope we can all continue to help you. And we all hope these issues will eventually go away, but it does sound like we're going to be in this for a long time, and this is just compounding with all the other issues in the world. But thank goodness there are folks like you and the doctors on the ground and the citizens and civilians who are helping each other, and hopefully that can make a little bit of an impact. So. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your stories. And unless anybody in the audience has specific questions, we will continue to share information as we do with all of our programs. We will share the audio and the video. I'll cut out that little piece, Andre, from the hospital, and resources. So if there's any other resources people want to share, please do email it to us. We'll put that into a general email when we send it out to everyone, and hopefully we can continue to support all of your efforts. And thank you again, and stay safe and stay healthy, and please share our deepest support and best wishes and health to everyone that you're working with.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone,
everyone.
for listening.
Have a good evening. All right, thanks again.
Bye.